Good morning. Let's go back to 1990 and a film called Crazy People. Now, Crazy People is a 1990 comedy starring Dudley Moore and Daryl Hannah and a lot of other prominent stars of the day. And the premise is that Emery Leeson, played by Dudley Moore, is an advertising exec, but he seems to be approaching burnout or a nervous breakdown, as they used to call this sort of thing back then, even though the phrase is effectively useless. Now, in one scene early in the film, he's frustrated in a traffic jam and he gets irritated with another driver, takes his cellular phone, throws it far away, which is a kind of sign of the mental state of tenseness that he's in. Emery starts rebelling against the shallowness and meaninglessness of the advertising industry by creating adverts that are direct and truthful and blunt and stripped of any pretense of persuasive cleverness. You know, he's really, really had it with this industry's lies. They just told things like they are, unlike any normal advert of the times. His boss, Drucker, the owner of the advertising company, doesn't yet know about this, but a colleague who cares somewhat suggests that Emery check into a psychiatric hospital in the meantime. There, he meets other voluntary patients, including Kathy Burgess, played by Daryl Hannah, and a whole collection of other patients with idiosyncrasies that we, the viewer, would find amusing in this context. In the meantime, Emery's direct and truthful adverts accidentally go to press and are distributed in the public eye. Contrarily, these adverts really work well, certainly with the public, and are an immediate success. Drucker claims the credit for this approach, and he gets Stephen to set all the other creatives that work in this same direction. Stephen, Emery's immediate colleague. Unfortunately, this doesn't work, so they go to the psychiatric hospital to see Emery and get him to make more adverts. He agrees on condition that he can rope in all of his new acquaintances, the other patients, to also work on new campaigns. And at this point, a whole raft of, well, quite funny adverts are developed. And this is kind of one of the pivotal, it's one of the pillars of the film, these very, very funny adverts. The film is halfway between not really very funny and very funny, and it also moves in directions that perhaps shouldn't be funny. For the time, 1990, it does take the subject of mental health a lot more seriously than a lot of films and stories would have done in those days, although by today's standards I think it's guilty of stereotyping. Most of the resulting adverts offered by the patients are funny, but some are not and are just embarrassing. I'm not completely sure that some of the things that are genuinely funny in the film should have been, and I think if it weren't for Dudley Moore, the film would not be anywhere near as funny as throughout, only being funny in pieces. Dudley Moore wasn't the first choice for that role, though. John Malkovich was, but he left very early on when there was a change in director, also very early on, and the producer there put Dudley Moore in that position. So overall, I think this isn't a particularly good film, but also not a particularly bad film. Dudley Moore keeps the film together and keeps it funny. It treats mental health problems in a somewhat enlightened way, but ultimately fails in this. It doesn't satirize advertising shallowness, but actually enhances it instead. And it doesn't score very highly these days as a film, but it's not the disaster it could have been. My biggest criticism of it, personally, is that it is unfair in many areas. Could it be remade today? Well, yeah, I think it could, but it would be too confusing. It would end up scattered by taking into account the many other types of advertising mediums we have today, and it would end up worse. So, Crazy People, see it if you want. If you don't, you're probably not missing too much. Have a very good Tuesday, have a very good rest of the week, and thank you very much. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.